Hey everybody, this is Kevin and I'd like to welcome you to my channel and also welcome you to my all-new series that I'm calling Building of the Estes K-Series Rockets. Now this has been an idea that's been floating around in my head for quite a while now, a couple years actually, and I'd like to thank my good buddy Don for even giving me the idea of doing such a thing. Being a historian of Estes, Don introduced me to the K-Series, as before that I didn't know what that meant or what those were. But in study and learning, the K-Series of rockets were the first rockets, in fact there were 59 of them, that Estes designed and produced for mass sale to the public. Back in 1961, Vern Estes designed the Astron Scout, and because it was his first produced kit for the public, it was called the K-1 for kit number 1. This series of rockets went through all the way up to K-59. And this lasted through the 60s and into the 70s. And again, we're going to focus on building. My dream is to get through each K-Series rocket, K1 all the way through K-59. It's quite a feat. It's not going to take hours, days, or weeks, or months. It's going to take years. But I've got the time. Hopefully I've got the energy. If I pace myself, we'll enjoy it. We'll learn a lot. I really want to study and learn about the history of these rockets. And that's what we hope to focus on. Now, this premiere episode is going to be a little bit different than the standard K-Series rockets because I'm going to focus on a special rocket that actually predated K-1, and it's the prototype for the Astron Scout that Estes just recently in the last few years has kitted and sold, and it's called the Orange Bullet. Got a copy of it right here. I'm going to talk more about this kit here in a second. But this kit was part of the signature series that Estes is producing, and it's highlighting the history of Estes, and basically because it is the prototype to what became the K-1, they wanted to highlight it as part of its new line of rockets because it was never kitted in the past. It was only a prototype. Now, because the K-Series would not have gotten off the ground had it not been for the design and success of the Orange Bullet, I'm going to build this in this first installment. And I'm calling this, and this is my own terminology, but I'm going to call it the K-0 because it did predate the K-1. A lot of the technology in the K-0 is what we'll see into the K-1, but we'll get more into that when we build the K-1 rocket in the next video. The Orange Bullet is, again, something that you can purchase right now. However, you're wondering, well, why is it packaged differently? Well, in preparation for the K-Series of builds, I went ahead and basically created my own clone kits. For those of you who don't know what cloning is, it's taking parts and templates and designs from plans to basically reproduce or mimic the original kit. Because the original kits are hard to, if not impossible, to come by these days. And if you do find one, you're going to pay a pretty penny for it. So it's a lot better, more cost effective to clone your own kit. Now, again, in preparation, I've cloned quite a few K-kits up to this point. These are the collection of kits that I've got ready to go. There's the K-1 Astron Scout, as we discussed earlier. So that'll be in the next video. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and build the Orange Bullet. Now, in cases like this, where an Orange Bullet is available for sale, there's really no reason to clone it. I went ahead and opened the packaging, took everything out, and repackaged it in a new package, a new bag. I made these little hanger tags for each one, printed up face cards for each one that would fit these bags I've got. So in cases like that, and I'll tell you when I'm doing that, this is just basically a repackage of a new kit. So that's the plan with that. And one other thing you may notice is the background is different. I am in a new shop. I've dedicated this little workspace as my K-Series building area. So for the foreseeable future, all of my K-Series rockets will be built in here. I do have a workbench in front of me with an overhead cam. We'll try to highlight the build process of each of these rockets and hopefully enjoy and learn as we go. So without any further ado, let me turn the camera around and let's get started on the Orange Bullet. Okay, first up we've got the K-0 Orange Bullet. Now again, this is part of the designer signature series, and let's go ahead and get the bag up, and I want to read some interesting information on the face card for you that'll kind of give us some insight as to how this is designed and built. Okay. Okay, the orange bullet, as you can see here, it's based on Vern Estes' first rocket design. And I want to read this little blurb here for you. In 1961, Vern Estes, founder of Estes Industries, designed the Astron Scout, which was the first Estes model rocket packaged for sale as a complete kit. The orange bullet was the prototype to the Astron Scout. With the Signature Series line, you can collect kits created by historic designers. And I find it very appropriate that this rocket did make it into the Designer Signature Series, because if it weren't for this rocket, we may not be where we are today in model rocketry. Now, one very interesting thing to note is, if you see here on the rocket, these little gray tabs at the bottom of each fin, there's 6 of them in total. Originally, they were made out of lead weight, and the purpose was to make the rocket tail heavy. In other words, if it were sitting empty, it would fall to its rear. Now, when the rocket is launched, obviously the motor is inside. That moves the weight forward and makes it stable. Upon ejection of the motor, the ejection charge will actually blow the motor out of the rocket. Therefore, the CG changes, and they added these weights to create a tumble recovery as the rocket came down, and that's what slowed its descent. Now, the modern version of the orange bullet has replaced the lead weights with just cardboard, and the idea is now when a motor ejects out, it will fall basically like a belly flop, or because it's ejected forward like a bullet, it's actually gone into a ballistic recovery, but they call it featherweight. So the original was called tumble recovery, now it's called featherweight recovery. Just a little nuance there in the kit. So with that being said, let's get our parts out, do a quick inventory. Here's the instructions that came in the modern kit. Okay, let's get this little bag open and we'll confirm that everything we need is here. Okay, so here is our inventory list. Okay, first up we've got the main body tube. We've got our die-cut balsa sheet. We've got our die-cut balsa fins. We've got our cardboard tabs that are going to glue in replace of the lead weights that they used to use. We've got our nose cone, balsa wood, very classy, nice touch. We've got our launch lug. And last but not least, we've got our decal sheet. Very nice. Okay, let me clear the board and we will begin the building of the orange bullet. Now I am going to deviate a little bit from the instructions in that they call for sanding and gluing the fins on to the body tube before you do any painting. But what I plan on doing is, because the balsa wood grain is rather porous, I want to get as much of that filled in and smoothed out before we glue it on, because that'll just make assembly a lot easier. So while the fins are still in their templates, I'm going to take some 220 sandpaper here and just lightly sand those smooth. We'll do both sides. And we'll go ahead and do these fin braces as well. Now I'm actually going to take these outside and primer them with some primer, and then dry sand the primer and try to fill in a lot of that grain in as best I can before we actually start assembly. So I'm going to take this out. Next time you see these, they will have a hint of primer color to them as it's filled in the grains, but I'm just doing that ahead of time. And I'm also not going to glue the cardboard tabs on until after these are painted in gray. So I'm going to hold off on this until pretty much the rocket's done. Then I can glue these on, because it would be very difficult to mask each of these off once it's already glued onto the fin. So I'm going to head outside with some spray paint and take care of the primer right now. Okay, well, I've got the fins out drying with the primer on them. We're going to go ahead and address our little tabs here. Again, they're die cut in the little cardboard. So I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut these out one at a time. And I'm going to smooth up the edges a little bit, that little tab. Get those sanded down. Okay. Then I'm going to take the tip of a toothpick and I'm going to CA glue it down on one end. Now you got to be careful when you do this. You want to make sure you're gluing them equally. In other words, I'm going to have 3 facing this way and then 3 facing the other way, so I paint the correct side. So I'm just going to put a little dab of super glue right there. Glue this on because eventually I'm going to snap this off. And then I'll take my toothpick, I'm sorry, the clothespin to hold the toothpick so I can spray paint these outside. So I'm going to do the remainder of these off camera, take them out and paint them, and we'll be done with them. Remember, when you do this, do them 3 on one side and 3 on the other side so they're facing the right direction once you glue them down to the fins. Okay, another slight departure we're going to take from the instructions is I'm going to go ahead and glue the nose cone on first before we glue the fins on and everything. That gives me a chance to get everything smoothed out and basically let this become one with the tube, get this joint filled in. It's going to be a lot easier to do all that if the fins are not yet attached. So to do that, we're simply going to take some wood glue and put it on the inside of the body tube. I will point out that the original plans back in the 60s actually showed cutting down the shoulder of the balsa nose cone to about 1/16 of an inch. But the modern day instructions don't call for that, so we're not going to do that. And besides, it's going to be on the inside anyway, so you'll never even know. So let me just run a small bead of wood glue around the inside. Okay. We'll press this in, twist it. I'm going to pull it out a little bit just to get the glue up by the edge. Push it back in. Okay, and we're going to let that cure fully, and then we're going to come back with our sandpaper and we're going to sand everything down as flush as we can. And additionally, I'm going to spray down the entire tube and nose cone with primer, immediately wipe that off with lacquer thinner, and that'll help fill in a lot of the grain and the spiral grooves. So we'll come back and I'll show you that step after this cures and dries. Okay, just to show you where we're at, I did take all 3 parts out and prime them. You can see here the fins. I primed them and then I dry sanded with 220, and it gave it a slick finish, which I think will smooth out the next coats once we get the thing assembled. I've also got the fin supports. I'm not sure what you call them. After I primered them and then sanded them down smooth, I measured back 3/8 of an inch from the leading edge, and I wrapped some tape around it, and then I just simply ran this down a sheet of sandpaper until I got back to the tape line, and then I brought the front end to a point. See if I can bring that into focus for you. You can kind of see that leading edge come to a point. So now we can go ahead and unwrap this, and we can cut these out and prepare them to glue to the body tube. Okay. Additionally, the nose cone did dry. I dry sanded the balsa to the tube as best I could, and then I primed the whole thing and then wiped it down with lacquer thinner. You can see that's why there's some residual gray color to it. That's just the primer left over, but you see how it's filled in the spiral lines pretty good. This is 2 coats of primer. So now once we get everything glued up, I can primer the whole rocket intact, wet sand, and she'll be ready to take paint. So let's set that aside for now. Let me get my knife out and we'll cut these strips out. Okay, now it should just pop right out. Yep. There they go. Beautiful. Okay, we are going to sand the sides down to get those nice and flush before we do any more work to them. Let's go ahead and cut our fins out as well. This is very light balsa. I'm just going to cut one out and show you what I'm attempting to do here. Okay. So once I get all three out, I'm going to hold them together and I'm going to sand all the edges flush with one another, removing those little nubs that we just cut through. And then I'm going to come back and glue these onto our support beams. But we'll do that on camera. But let me do the rest of these off camera and I'll get these all sanded down and ready to go. And then we'll do some gluing. Okay, so we've got the fins and the fin support. I don't know what to call these things, just braces. But I did go ahead and attack both of them with more lacquer thinner to clean off the majority of the outer surface of the primer, but it left the deep stuff in the grains, which helps keep everything smooth. So that's all set to go. I did the same thing to this part as well. So now we're just going to go ahead and glue. I'm going to glue these on to these before we glue the whole thing onto the body. Again, a little side step from the directions, but that's okay. The end result's going to be the same. So the way I like to attach my fins is I'm just going to run a bead of wood glue down the root of the fin. Spread it with my finger a little bit. And I'm going to lay it in position, and then I'm going to immediately lift it off. Just like that. Okay, we're going to give it about 45 seconds to a minute. We're just going to let it tack up. And then when we do reapply it, it'll be hard enough and tacky enough where it'll hold itself up. It won't fall over. So I'm going to let that sit and dry just for a minute. The other thing, I'll do this on camera later on, but I do need to make the markings for the fins. I'm going to have to cut the template out of the instructions, wrap it, and make the marks. And I'll use a straight edge to get my lines drawn on the body tube as well. So we'll do those. I'll just show you this one fin. I'll do the other two off camera. It's the same concept. We want to make sure that we butt the bottom of the root up to the bottom of this support right there. So lay it right in position. I'm going by feel to make sure it's centered on the wood. You can also verify by looking at it. It is centered. And see, it'll hold its position. It should stand vertically, which it is, and it's holding solid. All right, so that's one down. We'll do the other two off camera, and we'll come back and, well, I still need to mark the body tube, so we'll do that next. Okay, we're going to continue to let the fins dry, but while they continue to dry and cure, I'm going to go ahead and make the marks on the body tube for as to where we need to glue those fins eventually. So I cut out the template that's in the instructions, and you simply wrap it around the body tube. Take some masking tape, and you want to line up the notches. There we go. And I'm just going to, in fact, I'm going to lay the tape across there, and I'm also going to wrap or take another piece of tape just to secure it to the body tube. That way it won't rotate on me. Now it's secured to the tube. Unlike the instructions showing marking both lines and running the fin in between the lines, I'm just going to make one line, and I'm going to make that on the left hand side. Actually, I should do it down here. There we go. And then we can just remove the tape. And for marking the lines, the instructions say to use a door jamb. I prefer using the Estes tube marking guide. I think it does a wonderful job. So let me find the right size for it. Let's use this end here. Line that notch up. Draw the full length of the tube. Next one. And our third and final one. Just like that. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to continue to let those fins dry, and when they are cured, we will glue them to the body tube. Okay, the fins have had overnight to cure and harden completely, so they are now ready to glue onto the body tube. Before we do that, we actually want to take some sandpaper first, and we want to roughen up the area just to the right of the lines that we made, our reference marks. That'll give us a little bit better purchase for the glue to adhere to. Okay, take our wood glue, and I'm going to run a bead of glue down the root. And spread that out. I think I put a little too much on, but that's okay, just we'll wipe it off. Okay. And again, we're going to place it just to the right side of the line that we made. Set it down. And I'm going to remove it, and we're just going to let that tack up a little bit. I've got my cradle here that I want to use to actually hold the rocket. And while that is tacking up, we can go ahead and begin the next fin. Use a little bit less this time. We'll do the same, we'll place it in position. Let the glue settle a little bit. And remove. Okay, now at this point, we can go back to the first fin, and it should have tacked up by now. And we can go and permanently place it in position. Following that line. Okay, and then look above and make sure it's perpendicular to the tube, which it is. Make sure we're flush to the bottom. Perfect. And that little gap that's going to be open on the sides will get filled in when we do our fillets later on. Okay? Looks like number 2 is about ready to go. We can go ahead and glue it in position. Okay, that looks good. And I'm going to set that down just temporarily. I'm going to get the third fin. I'll do the third fin off camera, and we'll come back when these have hardened and we'll do our fillets. Okay, now that the fins have completely cured on the rocket body, everything is secure. You can kind of see I've already laid down some fillets in some of these joints, but I wanted to leave the last two to show you my technique. First thing you want to do is always have a paper towel ready to go because it's going to get messy. So we'll set the launch lug aside. Again, I've been using this Type-On Quick and Thick lately, and I really like it. So what we'll do is we'll find the two that I need to do, and we can do both at the same time. I'm just going to run a bead down the joint. And with very little pressure, I'm actually going to push the glue forward to fill in the front of the fillet. Wipe it off, and then gently drag with very little pressure, about halfway. Start over again, and just continue that all the way down to the bottom. Just like that. Clean up any excess. Perfect. Okay, we'll do the same on this side. Push it forward. Pull it back about halfway. Clean off the excess, and then go full length again. Just like that. Okay, and if need be, you may want to take a Q-tip. I've got a little bit of glue up in this joint here, which will get filled in eventually with fillet, but for now we just want everything even. So we'll clean that up. Okay, get everything smoothed out, nice. Okay, now the other sides that are already dry, we can go ahead and glue our launch lug on to one of those joints. We want to glue it into this inside joint where the fin meets the fin support. So we're going to lay it right into that joint right there. So what I'm going to do is actually just lay in a bead of glue inside the joint. That's a little excessive, so I'm going to clean up some. Okay, and we're going to lay this down to where the bottom is flush with the bottom of the tube. I'm going to drop that into position. Just right there. Okay, and we're going to come in later after the fact and put a fillet in on the top of the lug. So for now, that'll hold. Actually, you know what we can do is we can go ahead and now continue to put fillets on that top joint as well. Okay, so you can see how that all came out. And I'm just going to continue doing the other fillets on the other two fins all the way around. And we're going to leave this to sit horizontally. That's why I've got my cradle here. And I've got a dowel that I'm going to set this in and dry horizontally like that. So again, I'm going to finish those fillets up and we'll come back and look at it later. Okay, I just finished primering the whole rocket. It's had about an hour or so to dry, but I'm going to let it cure again overnight. But I've completely painted it with gray primer, and that laid down a nice base coat. And what I'm going to do is tomorrow, once it's fully cured after 24 hours, I'm going to hit it with white primer. Then I'm going to wet sand it, and depending on the results, I may have to primer it again with white. But I always like to put a two-color primer down. That way, when I'm wet sanding through the top coat, if I hit the bottom coat, I know to stop. Because if I go too deep, I'll get into the cardboard, and you don't want to get cardboard wet. So that's why I always use two different colors of primer. So again, that's pretty much it. I'm going to end the preliminary video now. Next time you see it, I'm going to have painted the rocket fully with its orange, and then we'll come back and do the decals on video. So for you, it's just going to be a second. For me, it's going to be a few days. So we'll catch right back up to you in a bit. Okay, as you can see, the orange bullet has changed quite a bit. In fact, I'm at a different bench right now. This is, I'll call my finishing bench. I've got more ability to do decaling and final touch-up and stuff. But here's the orange bullet. It's not quite done yet, but the paint is done. It took nice coat of orange gloss Rust-Oleum paint. And you'll notice I have glued on 5 of the 6 fins tips. And I left one off just to show you how I did it. But we're coming along nice. Once these are on and dry, then I'm going to go ahead and prepare the decals and we can do the decal work. But what I did was, because on the back of each tab, there was where I glued the toothpick on. When I peeled the toothpick off, it left a little bit of the cardboard exposed, which is good for glue adhesion. Now, the next thing is we got to get a little spot on the fin for glue adhesion as well. So what I did was I took my Dremel and I just tapped each tip of every fin to expose some of the bare wood down in there. And that's what is going to actually bond this securely to the little tab. So with that, I'm going to take some Tight Bond Quick and Thick. I use this because it dries clear in case any squeezes out, and it dries quicker as well. So I'm just going to put just a dab. See if I can show you this. That's actually more than I want, so I'm going to take a little off with a spinning Q-tip. There. Take my tab, make sure I've got the orientation right. You see on the bottom right there, there's a little bit of an angle to it. We want that angle to match the inside angle of the fin. So we're going to lay it in position. Okay, I'm going to press it in, and you'll see a little bit does squeeze out. Okay, I'm going to place it on the workbench to make sure it's flat to the base. There, just like that. And as you can see, it is now flush and matching with all the other ones. So I'm going to let those dry. Won't take too long. And then we'll come back, we'll do the decals, clear coat, and we'll be done. Okay, the foot pads on the fins are completely dry. I think they came out splendid. I could not be happier. But now it's time to do the decals. I've already got them pre-cut. I cut them as close to the actual decal as possible, so there's not much overlap, because there's not a lot of room between all these fins and everything. So I want to minimize the amount of backing. Let's go ahead and start with the main orange bullet decal. That's going to go right down the center of the front, right in that location right there. So let's go ahead and drop that in the water. Now the front of the rocket is looking at it when you can barely see the launch lug sticking out behind that right front fin. That's indicating that this is going to be the front of the rocket. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our decal out. So let's see if it's broken free yet. Let me give it just another few seconds. Okay. We're going to slide the backing out. And kind of fidget it around, get it perfectly straight and centered. You want it parallel to the tube. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to take a Q-tip and we're just going to roll it to roll out any air bubbles and moisture that's back behind the decal. Okay, looks really good. Okay, now we can take, and I'm just going to do one of each of these, and then I'll do the remaining off camera, and then we'll do a final closeout. But then we can take our little black stripe, and that's going to go, basically it's going to overlap. You can't see it now because I blended it, but it's going to go where the nose cone and the body tube actually met. Okay, that looks good. And we'll go ahead and do one of the fins, which is the Estes logo. Okay, I just have a little bit of trouble. One of the ends was curling under here, and I was kind of trying to work on that. I pretty much got it fixed. It's not 100%, but you know, sometimes they say good enough is good enough. Everything else looks good and straight, so I'm going to end this segment right now. I'm going to finish decaling the black stripes and the Estes logos on the other fins, and we'll come back and do a final closeout. Okay, well, the orange bullet is now complete. I got all the decals on, as you can see, as well as a clear coat. And when it comes to clear coat, what I prefer using is the Quick Shine floor polish that you can pick up at Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot. It's, I guess it's the modern version of the Pledge or Future floor polish that people have been using for years. But it dries within 30 minutes, leaves a nice gloss coat over the finish. Doesn't crack, doesn't cause any yellowing. It's just the ideal clear coat for me. But yeah, there you have it. That is the completion of the orange bullet. Really couldn't be more pleased. It's a beautiful display piece, and this is really going to get the ball rolling. Now, K-0 is complete. Now we're going to start working on K-1, the Astron Scout. So keep your eyes open for that video coming out soon. Thanks everybody for watching. God bless, and we will see you in the next video.